I grew up in a working class family with very little money, surrounded by people with very little ambition. For the most part, I was expected to settle down very early and start having children by 18, just as all of my cousins had. Thankfully, however, my parents were very encouraging when it came to my education. From a very early age, my father told me, "Books are knowledge and knowledge is power." Neither of my parents finished school. My father only made it to year 9 before he left and began working, but here he was teaching me one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned. To make a difference, I have to learn. The pitfall of my parents, however, is their hatred of most things being normal. As I was growing up, my mother would tell me how it made her feel claustrophobic to see the same four walls for too long. They live a vagabond life, bouncing from town to town, spending months in a van travelling, and then finding random towns to stop in for a few months, and then back on the road. It was this attitude towards settling down that left me lacking the stable upbringing I longed for. I dreamt of growing up in a house that I knew like the back of my hand, and having the same friends for years and years on end, going to the same school for more than a month or two. All in all, I was dragged in and out of 13 different primary schools. My grandmother was sort of the glue that held my entire family together. No matter where we travelled to or how long we were on the road, we would always return to Brisbane as often as we could. In a sea of instability, she was the anchor. By the time I was due to start high school, I decided that I no longer wanted to live the life my parents were living. I needed stability, I needed a quality education, and I needed familiarity. I moved in with my grandparents in Brisbane and started high school. I stayed there for 2 years, the longest I'd ever stayed anywhere. I made friends, I excelled at school, I became an active member of the local community by volunteering, and I even won a Community Services Award in Year 8 for playing such an active role in my school. I was sure that this was where my life would begin. I wanted to go to university, and I'd even chosen Griffith by then as the university I wanted to study at. This all came to an end, however, 2 weeks before I was due to finish Year 9. My nana had been sick all throughout that year. She was on oxygen 24 hours a day and on a steady dosage of morphine several times a day. I cared for her on a daily basis, balancing studying with caring for the woman I loved the most in the world. She passed away in her sleep. She was only 60. I had no choice but to return to my parents, and they became worse than ever. We ultimately ended up homeless. We were bouncing between the houses of relatives and friends. With 6 people in my family, this was no easy feat. 6 people take up a lot of room. It isn't as simple as crashing on someone's couch. Finally, we hit the road again, in search of somewhere we could find our feet. We ended up in Childers, Queensland. My dad found work picking tomatoes, and my mother took a job at the caravan park we were living in. For the first time in my life, both of my parents had steady jobs, and we had somewhere to live. Given, a caravan park may not seem like much to most people, but when you have so little for so long, it's easy to call anywhere with a bed and running water home. We were homeless for a year. I'd missed an entire year of school. I was able to skip year 10 and start year 11 in Childers. I knew I'd have to work hard to catch up, and I thought I was prepared to do so. Childers is a small town, which seems to run largely on social capital. If you knew certain people, you could do certain things. If you had friends with cars, you could go to Bundaberg, to parties, to the pub. If you had friends with cool parents, they'd let you buy alcohol. If these cool parents lived on acreage, you could throw massive parties far away from town. Getting caught up in the flow of things was really easy. 1 minute, I was focused completely on school. Next minute, I was cutting school, smoking, and falling into the wrong crowd. My grades slipped, and before I knew it, I was struggling to keep up. For the first time in my life, I had friends and people who knew who my family were. By year 12, I'd finally pulled my act together. I was back focusing on my studies on path to eventually making it to university. I'd ditched the group of friends I had had the previous year and found a group of like-minded people my own age who all had one thing in common. They wanted to leave Childers. It was this critical moment, realising that I needed to get out if I wanted to make something of myself, that allowed me to focus on my studies and recover from depression. I graduated that year with amazing grades and an offer to study at Griffith University. While my path here wasn't an easy one, I cherish every learning curve, every mistake, and every person I met along the way. They helped me to become the person I am today, someone who is able to enjoy life, to value education, and to look forward to the future.